Watch.
On March 15, 2022, the World Economic Forum put out an article that was perhaps one of their most dystopian to date. The concept, 15-minute cities.
It's abhorrent. It's being forced on the citizens of the world.
So you have smart homes, smart cars, smart streets, and smart dictatorship. This is sad.
What do they want to do? Well, they want to control the land. They want to control the food. They want to control the energy. They want to control the money. Well, if you do all of those things, you control you.
It's part of the UN Agenda 2030.
Under the guise of achieving a net zero world and curbing carbon emissions, they bring you 15-minute cities, which should better be called 15-minute smart prisons. For many decades and under different labels, the globalists have been relentless in their quest to subjugate the nations, strip them of personal property and utterly bring them into a place of total dependence. Working through powerful de facto government institutions, they have designed a playbook, with clearly concocted plots, on how to dispossess the nations of their assets and force them into an existence of utter subjugation. This time, the decoy is wrapped in shiny packaged cities which are really prisons, aptly called 15-minute cities, otherwise known as smart cities.
15-minute cities? So, in all those kind of cities, you have no freedom. There's no liberty. You go where we tell you. You stop where we tell you. You go out when we let you. So, the whole world is supposed to be in this prison of some sorts. So they're going to build those cities. They already have some, they're building them. All right, so make no mistakes about it. They are building them. And they're converting cities around the world to these 15-minute cities. Now, you have not seen the likes of what they want to do. And don't you think about the little smart city thing that some designers are putting up there? And no. No. That's just the cover-up. This is Satan's evil plan.
So what is a smart city? Smart city stands for Surveillance Monitoring Analysis Reporting Technology. Basically, a digital ID will be given to every resident that will track in real time all of their daily movements, their activities, their spending habits, even their carbon footprint. They will be given 15-minute travel times to complete their daily activities unless they have a permit. And if they exceed those 15 minutes, they can be denied access to their spending and their activities that they need to do for the day. So, of course, you're like, I'm not going to move to one of those cities, right? Well, here's the thing. Because of the laws governing the Agenda 2030 land development, the government can actually seize polluted lands and force their residents to move. So if the government deems the land and water around you polluted, they can force you to move from your homes to these cities.
Now what they're slamming us with is these 15-minute cities. Make no mistake, it's not about your convenience. It's not that they want you to be able to, have all of these places that you need to get to very close. And it's not about saving the planet either, by the way. The 15-minute cities, they will have to have those before they can lock you down. And that's what we're talking about here. So in Great Britain, some county already passed legislation. They will be able to impose a climate lockdown. That's the next step. That's what we're talking about. So in order to do that, they will have to have these 15-minute cities. The next step then, of course, will be you are only allowed to leave your immediate area for, let's say, 2 or 3 times a year. So, but there's other people that may have more money and they can actually buy your passings off of you. So guess what? The poor people will be left in these 15-minute neighborhoods while the ones that are better off get to go wherever they want to go. So this is what we're talking about.
The 15-minute city is a UN and WEF plan because they just might care about you and want you to drive less. This here is a cartoon from the WEF just for you good boys and girls. Now I'm telling you, in some areas this has passed. In the WEF's own words, the rearrangement of cities is absolutely about climate change. As far as approving it and getting this in motion, Oxford City is ahead of the rest. Let's look at this article at Vision News Online. They go over everything in short really well. Oxfordshire County Council passed climate lockdown trial to begin in 2024. Residents will be confined to their local neighborhood who have to ask permission to leave it, all to save the planet. Oxfordshire County Council yesterday approved plans to lock residents into one of 6 zones to save the planet from global warming. The latest stage in the 15-minute city agenda is to place electronic gates and key roads in and out of the city, confining residents to their own neighborhoods. But what it really is the plan for command and control. There will be permits, penalties, and even more ubiquitous surveillance. Council will determine where you go and how often and how long every time you do. 15-minute cities, or is it 15-minute prisons?
As typical as it is with real-life prisons, where the inmates have their food regulated, clothing regulated, and the exact distance of movement to be covered is restricted within the confines of the prison facility, the smart cities have the exact same archetypal design, in functionality and operation. However, the only difference in this case is that the people who would be forced to live in these 15-minute prisons have committed no crime whatsoever.
These evil cities, these prisons that they will set up around the world. Now they tell you they are smart cities. You want a smart life, come live there. Then you're in prison.
From another angle, take a few minutes to consider this real-life illustration of what the globalists seek to achieve by stacking and packing people within the confines of these 15-minute cities, as in a poultry with chickens under the monitoring watch of its owner.
What is a 15-minute city? So come on in, let me show you what a 15-minute community looks like.
Well, I'm excited to see this, Randy, because you always break things down into nice practical ways, right?
Here we go. These residents of the 15-minute community, they're not locked in, but they just stay there. They're free to come and go, but they don't. So let's take a step inside. Everything they need in their life is right here in their 15-minute community. A water bowl, a feed tray. They own nothing, but they are exceptionally happy.
You own nothing and be happy. Another slogan of deception. You own nothing and be happy. Like God didn't know that? And promised to bless Abraham and his seed? He didn't know you'd be happier with nothing? Really?
And with this ludicrous mantra, the purveyors of this evil carry on with this hideous work of dispossessing the nations of their assets and forcefully push to dominate their whole lives. And now, they have taken it several notches higher with the C40 cities.
And then the next thing is the C40 cities. Some of you may not be aware of that. You think about the 15-minute cities being spearheaded by the C40 cities. The C40 cities refer to cities around the world. They initially were about 40 of them. They've added more now. So even though the name hasn't changed from C40, but they've added more. So which city in your country belongs to the club of the C40 cities? Their policies stand for imprisonment and impoverishment. Ever heard the slogan? You'll have nothing, but you'll be happy. That's the push towards an Antichrist society as described in the Bible. That's the promise of the Antichrist. You'll have nothing and you'll be happy. That's his promise.
But of course, the World Economic Forum has a plan for this as well. And they say that in the future, and they're talking about by the year 2030, this is where their big tagline comes in that you'll have no doubt heard many times before: you will own nothing and be happy. And for those skeptics among you who say these 15-minute cities, they're never going to happen, well, let me ask you this question. Have you ever heard of C40 cities? Because there are 97 of these cities that currently exist around the world. And again, don't get me wrong, some of these cities are very enviable. They are nice cities to live in. However, if you look at some of the cities championed by the C40 network of mayors, LA, Paris, London, for example, the promotional material and the videos and all the other stuff that they make and the surveys is completely skewed. They completely omit the fact that, yes, you can have an amazing life in these cities if you're in the top 0.1% or even the 1%. But if you're in the other 99%, then it's a very difficult and hard life.
So the plan is to dispossess you of your assets and inconvenience you in so many ways until you are adjusted in such a way as to even ask for what they're handing out to you. There's so much inconvenience in many cities to drive your car today that it seems easier to go without your car. What are they doing? They are prepping you, programming you to do without your car. They're programming you. They're making it as difficult as possible for you to use a car. Make it as expensive as possible.
In fact, the aim of the C40s is to eradicate all cars from all cities altogether, which is extremely worrying. And the reason is, of course, it's going to be for our sustainable future. It's avoiding the catastrophe that's supposed to be coming to the planet, and all this nonsense that we've heard dished out time and time again.
The 15-minute cities is something that the WEF has created called C40, and it's called C40 cities. Basically, you won't be able to drive a petrol or diesel car anymore. You'll have to buy electric.
In private car ownership, which is why we're all being encouraged to produce the electric cars that we won't have enough electricity to run anyways, because you don't need electricity if you actually don't get to own a car. And if the goal is a 95% reduction in private automobile ownership, then it doesn't matter if there's no damn grid.
But the car is just one of them. There are other things. There are other things.
I looked into the C40 websites. The C40 is the consortium of municipalities that have signed on to the 15-minute city plan. And I read in their own documentation, this is relevant to the tri-state city idea, that their goals are to reduce caloric consumption to 2,500 calories a day by force, essentially, within the next 15 years, to ensure that the peasant class, which is everybody but the elitists, can't fly more than one time every 3 years, to not merely shift private car ownership from fossil fuel to electric, which is fundamentally impossible because the grid can't handle it, but to eliminate 90% of private car ownership so that people are forced to take, unbelievably expensive in terms of time utilization and non-existent public transportation systems, and to limit the amount of travel that people can do outside of their neighborhoods. And, and then I watch the legacy media claim that pointing that out is something akin to a right-wing conspiracy, which it most certainly isn't, because you can just find the documentation online. And then I look at places like China, which have taken this to an extreme. 600 million closed-circuit TV cameras in China. One for every 1.5 persons watching the Chinese all the time, able to monitor them 100% by face, and also to identify them by gait, and to limit their ability to do absolutely anything, to buy, to sell, to travel, to move, to leave their neighborhood, with this top-down surveillance system that perversely and consciously some of the Chinese engineers have actually named Skynet. And you can't even talk about this stuff without sounding like a raving conspiratorialist, but there it is.
Listen to Klaus Schwab, who says by 2030, meat will be for the rich and very wealthy for special occasions only. You with that? Again, on their own website, 16 kilograms, that's all you can have of meat. Right now, the dairy consumption, milk or derivative equivalent, so cheeses and everything else, they're hoping that you will only have 90 kilograms of that, but their aggressive, ambitious target for 2030 is 0. Now remember, they need you to live like we lived in the pandemic, except without the nice stuff that you might have had, like cheese and milk and meat in the pandemic. You'll be required to only have 2,500 calories a day. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't think I could live on 2,500 calories. Now, when it comes to clothing is a problem, okay? We have too many clothes. And I personally, I've watched television. I don't think we have enough clothes, quite frankly. So their progressive target for 2030 is that people will only be allowed to have 8 new clothing items per person per year. But they really are shooting for 3. So, comrade, you could have a new shirt, a new pair of pants, and maybe some socks. Merry Christmas.
If you violate any of these things, they'll freeze your bank account. That is the next step. These are stages in which they're going to implement this stuff. And this was signed up by the WEF, and the WEF has signed up with our mayor in London as the chair. And he has gone around the world to communicate this C40 to all of the countries in the world. And most of the countries are looking at adopting it. Now, I am going to abolish it. It is a hopeless position. We are going to be in an open prison, or shall we say a COVID, for the rest of our lives. We will not be able to work unless it's in our 15-minute city. It's diabolical. It's not this is not the right thing. And it's been hidden from the public. No one's talking about it.
So they make life so difficult for you until you give up and accept the kind of life they want you to live as slaves under them. Because they will run the government that they are planning to install. They will run that government. And since they will abolish elections, you can't remove them. So they become permanent. So they're creating a monarchy of some sort without saying it's a monarchy. So imagine a world where Klaus Schwab becomes king and Guterres becomes his chief advisor. What a world. What a world. What a world. But if you're not watchful, you won't realize that that's actually what they want. That's what they want. But they're not about to get it. I have news for them. They're not about to get what they want. This is not their day. This is not their day. This is an effort in vain. It's an effort in vain. Let me show you the future of those cities they plan to build. So he says, then the seventh angel poured out his flask into the air, and a mighty shout came from the throne of the temple in heaven, saying, it is finished. Then the thunder crashed and rolled, and lightning flashed, and there was a great earthquake of a magnitude unprecedented in human history. I want you to mark that. This is Revelation chapter 16, verse 18, giving you a record ahead of time of the biggest and the most terrible and most destructive earthquake in human history. He has told you before the time. Look at the cities. And the cities around the world fell in heaps of rubble. This earthquake destroyed all of them. Why did they have to be destroyed? Because they were built on the blood of other men. With the destruction of human lives. A murderous agenda that they had. And they built all these cities.
He catches the wise in their own craftiness, and the schemes of the wily are brought to a quick end. Job 5:13.
Great. Now, by the way, Shambatra, who was labeled there as Mayor of London, I'm not sure that he was actually Mayor of London. I know he was running for the election, but you can confirm. All right. So, don't take these things lightly. We're not speculating on what they might want to do. No. These are things they wrote down and agreed upon and signed. See, these are things they planned to do. They're written down. And they try to get a lot of cities around the world to join them. I told you before, I said, find out which of your cities, which city in your country has been listed. What they did was, they didn't go through the central governments. They went directly to mayors of cities and governors of states. That's what they did. Then suddenly you found these mayors and governors making new laws, trying to make the life of their own people more difficult. It was all coming from decisions from the C40 cities. So take that seriously. They're not joking. They like to sneak up on you when you're not watching. But Jesus said, watch and pray. That's why we're doing this. We're watching, praying. Because never again are we going to allow what they did at COVID to happen again. They were actually planning the climate lockdown. They wanted to lie to the whole world about climate change and then spring that thing on us and say, oh, for XYZ reason, the cities have to be locked down, and so on. And then I told you about the World Health Organization, WHO's new policies, the treaties that they came up with for nations to sign, to practically give them charge over the nations of the world. So they could declare a health emergency anywhere and lock down that country. All they want is control. And why would control be given to men who through time have proved themselves to be so corrupt and evil? Very corrupt indeed. The Guterres of the United Nations wants to sell water to everybody. He doesn't think you should have water free of charge. And when I say water, I'm not talking about water in a bottle that they sell to you in the supermarket. I'm talking about water from all sources, he says. Whether you get it from the ground or from the rain, it should be paid for. These are satanic ideas. And they only get them from demons. So they pressurize leaders of nations, leaders of states and cities. They pressurize them to come up with these policies. And then they create awkward laws like this. So that's why we're not quiet, we're praying, and we deal with these matters in the realm of the Spirit. Ensure that Satan doesn't have his way, because the Bible tells us it's Satan that's behind this move. They may not know it themselves. A lot of those leaders don't have a clue. They don't know what's going on. But they find they are unable to resist those who dictate these things to them, because they use demonic power on them. That's why. So they're not able to resist them. But we have been given authority, power in the name of the Lord Jesus to resist the devil. And then the Bible says, and he will flee from you. So he has to flee. We can resist him, and he has to flee. First John